Well, hello, greetings. Welcome, 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 welcome. Aquaba. Happy Sunday. We truly hope that you are at your very highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual strength right at this moment. And if you're not there, that you're on your way to arriving there quickly. We're so happy that you are here to join us for this 139th episode of Our Ancestors' Voices. And our topic today is the dangers of celebrity analysis, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, one of many weekly programs sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we'll have a full menu of the other broadcasts as well as at the end of this hour. And we're just glad that you're here to join us today. We start, as we always do every week, by giving homage and respect to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. I just in this last week completed a book reading about the efforts on behalf of the indigenous people in the South Dakota, here in this backward country, town of Wounded Knee in 1973. Very moving portrayal of the courageous efforts by indigenous people to reclaim their dignity and their land. So we stand shoulder to shoulder with them every day, all day. And our African ancestors, we stand shoulder to shoulder with. As soon as I finished the book about the indigenous people in Wounded Knee, I started a book talking about our sister May Mallory, who most of us may not be familiar with, but she was originally associated with Robert Williams in North Carolina and evolved into a pretty impressive figure in the African liberation movement, leading protests against the murder of Patrice Lumumba at the so-called United Nations in New York, and becoming a strong person who worked alongside Malcolm X in Harlem, and just really a dynamic African woman. So we give respect to her as an ancestor and all of our African ancestors who are truly the reason why we are here today, continuing this glorious struggle for justice and forward human progress. So we just start, as we always do, by just acknowledging the roots and origins of this weekly program. Our Ancestors' Voices, as I mentioned, is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the AAPRP. And the AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan-African political party that is based in Africa. And the key there, you all, is mass, independent, and revolutionary. So we're not the Democratic Party, we're not the Republican Party, we're not the Labor Party, we're not the Likud Party, we're not any of these bourgeoisie political parties. We are a mass, independent, revolutionary, Pan-African party, struggling to achieve Pan-Africanism, which we define correctly as one unified socialist Africa, one unified socialist Africa. That is what Pan-Africanism is. And that is our objective that we are fighting for. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined pretty comprehensively in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. The picture of the cover displayed on your screen, if you're able to see a screen. And you should check out that book because it outlines the actual on-the-ground work that the AAPRP is engaged in. And just to give you some quick examples of that, we highlighted over the last several weeks the work in Burkina Faso by young AAPRP militants on the ground to build and maintain the Thomas Sankara Center for Liberation and Pan-African Unity. And we will have at the end of this broadcast the QR code that you see there on the screen right now. You can scan it right now and become a sponsor of that wonderful revolutionary literacy program we have going on in Burkina Faso. And then another example is what we're going to be highlighting today and for the rest of this month is the work to have the All African People's Revolutionary Party's first party congress in exactly a month in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. I have my ticket and acquiring all the other things I need to attend, and just really looking forward to having the honor and the opportunity to move the party's work forward at home in Africa. And we are going to be asking you to contribute to support our work to have our party Congress. We have to transport quite a few people from various parts of the continent to Guinea-Bissau. And that, in this capitalist-dominated world, you all takes financial resources. So we ask your support. We only rely on the people's support. We don't get any grants from capitalism. We get no tax write-offs. We're not a nonprofit. We're an independent, mass revolutionary political party. So we don't get that. So we ask you to support our work to bring about liberation. And we hope that you will follow through and really make that contribution to help us ensure that we can get all of our comrades there so that we can build capacity to continue this glorious work. And our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself and my daughter, Shakura. My name is Ajamu. Her name is Shakura. Our last name is Umi, which means life-giving. And we are both organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we're thankful that you're here to work us through this question of the dangers of celebrity analysis. And to get us started, I will turn it over directly to Shakura.
Well, thank you so much, kind Father. Thank you so much. All right, good people. So we hope that you are well, and I am ready to jump in and just remind us once again, in case we have let capitalism slip in, as conniving as it is, into our mind brain cells and our ideologies. Maybe it snuck in our nostrils overnight and we have forgotten how vicious this system really is. So allow the AAPRP to reintroduce this vicious system to you. And I hope that you, after listening to this slide, can be more convinced that there is an outcome that gives us hope. If you let capitalism leave it and tell you the story, it will teach you that the only way for you to truly survive is to just accept the fact that you get to unwillingly join a force that you don't want to join. And that means selling yourself out. That means adopting principles and policies that deep down, you know, you're not in favor of. But, to resist that would look bad, right? And to resist that would make it look like you were, quote, ungrateful. So the system teaches you that you need to just accept what the reality is. The system teaches you that you need to not push back, because if you rock the boat, if you're an agitator, then you're a problem. And if you're a problem, that usually means you need to have your life taken, or that means you need to end up in prison somewhere, because people who are a problem and problematics, they need to be locked up, right? Because again, they're criminals and they're bad people, right? Like, these are all the rhetoric that gets literally shoved down your throat every single day. It gets shoved down your throat, and multiple times a day, it gets shoved down your throat. And if you don't believe me, one particular policy, which is such an oxymoron to me, and even I challenge myself with this, is to think about, for colonized people, police have never, ever, ever been our friends. And if you really understand the history, then you understand that they started off as white supremacists, and they still are active card-carrying members of white supremacy. But in addition to that, they were overseers for Africans. So they literally transitioned from being on the plantation and working right under the master to having their white supremacy meetings and being Ku Klux Klan members. And overseers turned into police officers, who turned into sheriffs, who turned into other people who basically are given too much power to be able to abuse other people, specifically colonized poor people, just because of the positionality that they hold in this world. So that's one policy that I would say has been forced for us to accept, is that when something happens, if someone breaks into your house, if someone tries to steal your car, if someone tries to steal your quote unquote Christmas presents that you have bought as you're walking out of Walmart or Target, your initial reaction, the very first thing you will think to do is to do what? Call the police. Even though you know deep down that is not a good idea. You know that deep down, because when they pull you over, you're not excited to see them, right? So why is it that when you get your stuff stolen, that's the first thing you think to do? If the music next to you in your neighbor's house is too loud, what's the first thing you think to do? But yet at the same time, when you pass by them beating down a colonized person, or literally having the colonized person not be able to breathe, and you're driving past it or recording it or doing whatever you're doing, you see the same situation playing out, but yet you're telling yourself that that's the first thing you need to do because a harm has been done to you. And who's supposed to save the day? The people in blue, right? That's the narrative. That's the rhetoric. That's the objective. And that's what we are taught every single day. So the purpose of this slide is to help us unpack that and to resist that, because it really is rhetoric that is full of nonsense. And as I just highlighted, the oxymoron behind it is that it doesn't make sense for you to call the same person who is abusing you. That does not make sense. That does not make sense. But that's the society we live in. The society we live in is filled with things that do not make sense. And that's why you need to be able to endorse your own brain power and start to think about the things that do not make sense. Because I don't know about you, but I'm very analytical. It's my parents' fault, but I also receive it and I'm okay with it. So I'm going to sit there and I'm going to think about things. And if they don't make sense to me, I'm going to be slow to adopt, because I don't understand why you want me to do something that doesn't make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense, then that means I might be able to find another way. It means I might be able to share with my organization and my work study members another way. And more importantly, that means there might be another way that might be more humanizing. And I've come to understand that everything in this system is not based on promoting humanity, which means there's always another way. It just may not be communicated. So again, this is the importance of joining an organization that's working for justice. So you can see that. So we have to continue to think about that and really just think in more detail about what that looks like and how that might be for folks. And so I just want to continue to highlight that and help us understand that, you know, everything that America has, it's stolen. Everything. Some of the inhabitants that live in America currently were stolen. Some of the resources like rubber, cacao, gold, coltan, stolen. Some of the practices and policies were exploited. And humanity has been exploited on this US soil. Humanity has been exploited. From the moment the land was stolen, humanity was exploited. From the moment that they raped those indigenous people, humanity was exploited. From the moment that they lied to those indigenous people and said, we have something that will help you, knowing they were giving them folks fevers and viruses. That was a problem that's set to be. Just like they lied to the Africans and told them that they had a way to fix their quote unquote bad blood when we think about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. I mean, this is the society that we live in, people. This is a society that is exploiting poor, uneducated Africans and telling them that there's something wrong with their blood, when in actuality, you're giving them a sexually transmitted disease. And then you're going to lie 400 years later and say that you didn't give it to them. And then I'm supposed to teach that lie to my students when they take my health literacy class. I don't think so. I don't think so. So we have to continue to unpack those things and be critical. As I said, we have to think about it and we have to make it make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it's probably a lie, which means we need to find the truth. That's what that means. So we have to think about that. We have to think about how every single moment that we live on this soil, we are experiencing anti-human behavior. And as I said, it seeps into our brain cells. It comes into our bodies. It's in our bloodstream, whether we know it or not. Because again, we start to think about ways to practice that same anti-humanistic behavior. The minute somebody cuts you off, if you're driving on the freeway and you feel like your life is endangered, or if you just feel like you just don't want to be cut off that day, you may be inclined to show that person who cut you off a special finger on your hand, if you understand what I'm saying. That's anti-humanistic behavior. But where did you learn it from? Did somebody do it to you? Is that how you were able to navigate through another crisis, by doing that to somebody else? And yet it keeps repeating itself over and over again. We experience these things every single day. Another example of that is when you're at the stoplight and you see the shelterless person on the medium next to you holding up the sign. You know that it's going to be 27 degrees tonight, or you know that it's 113 degrees. And yet you still continue to have your hands at 10 to 2 because your frame is to look straight ahead and to not even engage the other human being who is literally half a foot away from you, literally. Because the objective is, well, they made the choices they made. That's not my problem, because our society teaches us to be individualistic, not to be humanistic, and to think about how the person made some unfortunate choices because the system never wanted them to succeed in the first place. If that were truly the case, then they wouldn't be working a job where they weren't making livable wages in the first place, which means they'd be able to continue to keep a roof over their head because they can afford it. Because they could afford it. So we have to continue to think about those things. The system wants all of us to understand that there is something wrong with us. Allow me to give you some examples. If your child is, quote unquote, having problems at school, and maybe the concept of expulsion or suspension comes up, then the ideology behind that is your parenting is broken, right? If your skin is too oily, you need to do something about that, because oily skin is gross, right? If your hair is too silky or too curly, there are things that can be done to, quote unquote, fix that, because something is wrong with that. Maybe you have clothes that are too old fashioned. So you need to go to Macy's or Target or Old Navy and update your wardrobe immediately. Maybe you don't talk correctly, or you don't speak the right way. Something is wrong with you because you sound, quote unquote, uneducated by talking that way. Maybe you have bad posture. There's something wrong with your posture that needs to be fixed. Your teeth are stained. You need to fix your teeth and make them whiter. Your house is dirty. Why don't you hire a cleaning service because you don't know how to keep a clean house? Maybe you're competing with coworkers because the circumstances where we work allow us to see that, oh, they're getting more products sold, or they're getting more numbers in terms of marketing. They're doing something that I'm not doing. I need to do better. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job. I need to get better than them so I can make more money and get a promotion faster than Johnson or faster than whoever else you're competing with. And it becomes such an issue. And some people might come up to you at your job and say, what's wrong with you? Why do you lack motivation? Why are they working harder than you? Because it's all about separating us and being individualistic, right? It doesn't make more sense for us to come together as a group and sell more products together because we can all put our ingenuity together. No, that would be too much like right. The last example I have is that even your animals are disobedient if they don't listen to you, which means something is wrong with you if you can't make your cat or dog listen to you, okay? These are all examples of the system teaching us that something is wrong with us, and it happens every single moment of the day, you all. So we must put up our armor to protect that, and the best way to do that is to remember that the system teaches us that we are the problem, not the system, when in actuality, we need to flip that script. Next slide, please. We flip that script and we think about how there are other ways to navigate through that, and understanding that as hard as this dehumanizing system works to break us down and dismantle us and deconstruct us, we need to protect ourselves ideologically, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And the best way to do that is to remember where we come from and to remember who we come from, okay? So we continue to think and raise up Amy Jocks Garvey. We continue to raise up Shirley Graham Du Bois. We continue to raise up specifically our ancestors who weren't afraid to start to delve into the Pan-Africanism of it all. Because again, we don't want to just focus on Africans and the diaspora. We want to focus on Africans doing the work on the continent as well as everywhere else, because all of those things have contributed to doing what? Helping Africa to be a free continent, so that the descendants who come from it can actually be treated with the respect that they deserve, right? So we think about Dr. Huey P. Newton. I love the fact that this brother completed a dissertation and used that information, just like Amy, just like Shirley Graham, just like Kwame Nkrumah, use the information that they obtained from the education system to enhance our people and to make the realities of our people better. There's no better way to do that. There is no better way to do that. I think about our comrade, Geronimo Pratt, also using the same systems that have tried to oppress us and using that system and the education obtained to apply it to us advancing as a people and basically working hard to free Mother Africa. That's basically what all of that has come out to be. And so we have to continue to think about that, because we have the power to do that. But it doesn't just stop with the education system. It doesn't just stop with the institutions that we're completing these educational degrees with. It also means that we have to enhance our ideology, which means we have to increase our political education. I know you're tired of hearing us say it. I know you are, but here's the reason why it's still very important. The problem is if you just allow yourself to be educated from these Western systems that promote capitalism and promote patriarchy and promote homophobia, especially if you're in a southern city like I am, then you're going to be confused all over again, because the Western capitalist institutions are designed to do what? Uphold the capitalist institution system itself, right? So the objective, if you will, is to find a slick way to take the information that they're giving you and still add a critical humanistic lens to it and still use it to advance colonized people's struggles, not promote colonized people struggling more. That's the tricky part. That's really where it comes down to it. So you have to increase your political education. And the best way to do that is to do what? You have to decide, are you going to decide how much you need to learn? Like, are you going to acknowledge that you don't know anything? Are you going to acknowledge that? I think that's the first step. Are you going to be okay with the fact that you don't have any information based off of what your ancestors have done? You haven't picked up any books. You haven't read any of the people that you have heard us do seminars for the last year and a half. Are you going to acknowledge that the first step is that you need to take the first step in changing that? Are you going to acknowledge that we need to seek more ways to incorporate education and to improve our greatest weakness, which is what? Ignorance. Our greatest weakness is not that we're colonized. Our greatest weakness is that we are ignorant and we are okay with it. That is our greatest weakness. That is not attractive. That is not attractive. We will never get Mother Africa back if we continue to be okay with knowing nothing. In what other context can you live in this world and not know anything and be successful? And even in this context, people are not successful because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, stressing and spending all your money on gifts that you know you can't afford because your utility bill hasn't been paid yet. Meanwhile, your heat's going to get turned off 2 minutes from now, but at least there's presents under a Christmas tree because you're supporting the fact that white supremacy allows for some European man to come in your house and bring gifts every year on a certain day of the year. I mean, come on, you all, we got to do better than that. We got to do better than that. It starts with us looking outside of ourselves. That means we need to understand that this world is not just for us. This world is for all of us. And we need to consider doing for others, not thinking about what others can do for us. Again, that individualistic, selfish nonsense has really, really put a damper in the African way. In indigenous people's ways, in Asian descent people's ways. That has never been our way of doing things. But yet this system teaches you that it's okay for you to be self-centered. So we have to think about that. Use our ancestors, learn from them, understand that we need to understand what we need to do. And keep in mind, that doesn't mean that we continue to vote for people that look like us. As I close, that may be a tactic that you may feel is effective, but what we are arguing for is that you join an organization that you feel is working for justice. And if you feel like voting is the key in that organization that's working for justice, then you keep working on that. But you still incorporate some political education while you are advocating for people to get registered. We personally don't agree with that, but we understand that any organization that's working for justice is better than no organization. And our comrade Kwame Ture said that. We just want Africans to be organized in some capacity because some organization is better than none. So if that's what avenue you feel is effective, then go for it. But if you're a part of the AAPRP, then you understand that we have to increase our political education because we're literally using the pebbles from our ancestors. They have literally laid it out on a journey and on a path. All we have to do is pick up the pebbles and learn from them because unfortunately they were going through some of the same stuff that we are today, but they had mechanisms, they had tools, and they had tactics that were effective then, and they continue to be effective now. And in some cases, you can do what my dad said as I close, and you can use some of those older textbooks that they wrote, like Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, and you can adapt it and give it an upgrade based on this 2022 experiences that colonized people are facing. So with that, we ask that you consider joining an organization that's working for justice. That way you can resist the dehumanization. And in doing that, you have to increase your political education, which means following the footsteps of those who have come before you so that you can be better prepared to move forward and make the world a better place. Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe, Madasi, Asante Sana. Thank you very much, Shakura. Thank you very much. And before we get into the core of this discussion about these celebrities and this analysis and following celebrities and listening to celebrities and giving a damn about celebrities, before we get into that, just want to say again, we have on the screen, donate to aprp-intl.org. And what that's about, we're going to continue to alert people to this, is within a month, next month, January, the second week of January, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, we're hosting our very first party congress in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. And what is a party congress? Well, a party congress is not a conference. Understand the difference between a conference and a congress. A conference is something, we've all attended conferences. You go there, there's topics presented, there are discussions had, but you don't really, the people that you participate in the conference with, once it's over, you might, for the most part, never see them again. And whatever's discussed at the conference, it's pretty much left up to your own devices to figure out whether you would ever use those concepts in your life and your work or not. And for most people that attend those types of events, they don't, because they don't have an organized process to make that happen. The difference with a Congress is it's a process designed specifically for political formations like the APRP to come together and make assessments on the work that we've done, make assessments on the political positions that we hold, and to do a tremendous amount of work designed to formulate a conclusion as to where we are with those questions and where we need to go with those questions. So as I mentioned, we have not yet had a party congress. This will be our first one. And it's very exciting because we're going to be talking about our position on gender, for example, our position on the Pan-African fight, the correct strategies to achieve Pan-Africanism going forward. And we have spent the last 2 years researching, studying, struggling over these concepts so that we could come out of this Congress with an analysis. So the difference is between a Congress and a Congress, a conference and a Congress, is that we will come out of this meeting next month saying, okay, this is where we have been, this is where we have come to, and this is where we want to go in the future going forward, collectively, all over the world where we exist. And so that's a very important aspect for us as an organization. And it's also a critical point, honestly, for me individually, because the APRP has had a number of historic events that have impacted the organization in profound ways. And since I've been a member since 1984, there have been 2 of those major events. In 1994, we had a meeting of all of the elected leadership within the APRP. And at that time, I was a part of that here in the state of California, but I was not able to go to that meeting, which was held in Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States, because I had just been terminated from my employment for speaking out against injustice. So I just wasn't able to afford to go at that time. And then in 2002, we had an all cadre meeting in Chicago. And for that meeting, I had my ticket and I was ready to go. But a couple of days before that, I got a blood clot in my brain and went in a coma and pretty much almost died. And unfortunately for imperialism, at least that's how I see it, it didn't happen. I'm still here and much better than I was back then. So, but wasn't able to attend the all cadre meeting. Still was able to do the work before each of those occasions to contribute, but just wasn't able to actually participate in the actual meetings. So now we have this party congress next month, and I, have my ticket, as I mentioned. I'm ready to go, and really looking forward to it. It's really going to take a lot to stop me from participating this time. So I think this is a very important moment in our history as the APRP. It's also a very important moment in the history of the Pan-African movement, as well as the movement for justice and human forward progress. And so that's why we ask you to support us in putting our party congress on. We have a lot of comrades that we have to pay for travel on the continent, from one part of the continent to the other, lodging in Guinea-Bissau. I'm not asking you to contribute to, I'm paying all of that for myself out of my pocket. I paid for it all already out of my pocket. But the comrades we have on the ground in different parts of Africa. We need your support. So please go there. When you go to that site, aprp-intl.org, you will be directed and it'll ask you, do you want to join? And you click on that, and don't worry, oh my God, I don't want to join that. Don't worry. It just takes you to another part of the site, and then you'll have an option where it says, how do you support? And there you will have options on how to contribute to the APRP and indicate that you want to support the party Congress, and that whatever you contribute, $5, $10, $50, $100, $1,000, $5,000, whatever you contribute will go towards our work to have this historic party Congress. So we are so thankful for your support, and I know you'll do it because you're good people. And even some of you police on here and agents for imperialism, you should, part of your work, you want to try to get close to us, make sure you make a donation in the process. Okay, so let's get into this topic. The primary capitalist propaganda strategy. What is that about, you all? And what we're saying is that nothing within this capitalist world operates within the context of this system unless it's designed to continue to uphold this system. And what we mean by that is whoever has a platform within the capitalist system, whoever you see on television, whoever is starring in the movies, whoever is making music, whatever the case may be, and their platform is a large platform where they reach millions of people, the only way that you're ever going to be permitted to do that within the capitalist system is if whatever you're putting out there is designed to uphold the capitalist system. And what I mean by uphold it is do nothing to sabotage it or attempt to discredit it. So all the household names you know that are celebrities, all of them fall within this category of people who are doing work that is designed to uphold the capitalist system. And if you want just a simple measure to test that, just think about, name movies you have seen that have come out of Hollywood or Nollywood or anywhere where that are dominated by capitalist propaganda that really show the masses of people organizing, coming together and defeating imperialism, and doing it by any means necessary, not doing it through some peaceful process that's controlled by the capitalist system, but doing it by any means necessary. Name one movie, one television series, one comic book, one anything that shows the masses of people defeating imperialism on a collective basis. You cannot do that because such a propaganda piece does not exist, and it will never exist within the confines of this capitalist system. Why? Because they are never going to give you a recipe to spell out their downfall. They are not trying to do that, you all. So that is your proof that nothing they allow to exist is going to do that. That's why nothing like that exists. The best you'll get from them is you'll get a story of some Superman, maybe even a superwoman or a super them, and that individual will make a blow against imperialism. They'll give you that because that's a fantasy. It can never truly happen like that in real life. So they'll give you that. They'll give you a Wakanda movie where a fantasy place in Africa where they defeat imperialism, because that's never going to happen that way. One country is never going to be able to defeat imperialism. That's a fantasy. So they'll give you that because they know that you will never get the proper inspiration from something like that to understand how in real life we can make that actually happen. So they'll give you fantasy, but they will never give you the blueprint for how we can succeed in defeating them. So that's the first point that we have to make. The second point is, even if whatever you say, even if whatever comes out that they produce, whether it's covert or overt, whether it's obvious or it's very subtle, it's always going to be about some form of them winning. Even the best intentioned products are going to come out with that result. And I'll give you an example. I think the documentary that Colin Kaepernick did on Netflix, I think he had every effort to make that a good representation of our struggle. And you can tell because he's in there talking about people that never show up in mainstream capitalist media. Assata Shakur. He mentions Assata Shakur by name in his Netflix documentary. He mentions Marcus Mosiah Garvey by name. These are not names that are ever a part of any capitalist propaganda. So I know that African in his heart wanted to do something to make a contribution to our struggle. But I also understand how capitalism works and understand that Netflix is not going to give him or anybody else a free license to put out a product that is designed to undermine the capitalist system. So I know that he had to struggle to get those names in the final product. I bet you money that he had to struggle to do that. And he also, I know they pushed him to do other things in that documentary that were designed to uphold their hegemony. And I'll give you an example, a subtle example that if you saw the documentary, I guarantee 99% of you didn't even notice. And that's that the whole latter part of the documentary, he started off, he was talking about institutionalized white supremacy in the capitalist system. And then by the time it got to the end, the whole thing was about his individual effort to not become a baseball player, but to become not become any other position player in football, but to become a quarterback. That's what the whole end of the movie was about, was his individual quest to make sure he could play quarterback as an African quarterback. Again, this individual journey, that's all they want you to understand about life. There's no possible way we can have a collective victory together because that would seal their defeat. So the only thing that they will give us is, well, you can obtain individual positions in the capitalist system. We will give you that. And so that's what that's designed to do. But what that does, as it says on the screen, is it's a subtle way for them in the end to win. Even if 90% of his documentary is spent criticizing them, the last 10% overshadows the 90%, because at the end, when the credits roll, the bottom line and the bottom message that you got out of it is that I can do things in my life to make it in this capitalist system. And at the end of the day, that's the message they want you to leave everything with, not the message that we can destroy this backward ass system and build something better. That is not the message they want you to leave anything they're producing with, and you will never leave anything they're producing with that message. So that's what we mean when we say covertly or overtly. And this is why, to most of us, any type of solution that doesn't include the capitalist system is incomprehensible. We can't imagine anything in this world where capitalism doesn't exist, where we don't have this individualistic reality, where everything's not based on what I do as an individual. Most of you can't even envision any type of collective reality. And the way we know that is you won't join an organization to work with us. You just refuse to do that because you don't believe that collective action is a road to progress. You think arrogantly that as an individual, you can provide a solution that can make a contribution. Some of you think that. Some of you think that. Some of us we just think that we don't need anybody else, that whatever we can do by ourselves individually is all we can control. And that's what they've conditioned us to believe, because that's, again, them winning. There's no way you're going to defeat them as an individual. So what they've done is condition us to believe that, well, we can't come together collectively. That's not possible. So then that means they win. So that's what they want to have continue to happen. And that's what they allow. That's the role that culture plays in the capitalist system, is as a tool to perpetuate capitalism. And so within this concept or context, the absolute best we can ever do is achieve individual positioning within the capitalist system. So under that context, we can look at the state of Georgia in the United States, and we can say, okay, the whole definition of our progress is Raphael Warnock beating Herschel Walker. So a lot of you believe, well, that's a choice. You know, we have a choice there. We're making progress. Warnock won last week. That's progress for us. But if you step back a bit and look at it for what it actually is, instead of what we emotionally want it to be, what we really have there is a blabbermouth fool versus a corporate Zionist. That's not a choice to me. That's like somebody coming to me saying, I'll either shoot you in the gut or I'll stab you with a dagger in the gut. That's not a choice. I mean, technically it's a choice, but that's not a quality choice. So you got to understand that, because when we're talking about moving forward collectively, that's a qualitative choice that we're committed to achieving. We think more highly of ourselves than to say, well, the best we can do is the lesser of two evils. I don't want that. That's disrespectful to our people's legacy and our history. That's disrespectful to all of humanity. I don't want that. That's nothing. That's nothing to achieve. So that's why we have to understand this question of propaganda and how capitalism uses propaganda and how it uses individual Negroes within the capitalist system to perpetuate its propaganda. That's what it does. So from Thurgood Marshall and Jackie Robinson, these are all people that we all grew up taught to respect, right? Thurgood Marshall was the attorney for the NAACP, essential in contributing to the Brown versus the Board decision in 1954 and many of the other NAACP cases that are definitely contributions to our struggle. I don't make any effort to take that away from him or the NAACP. Jackie Robinson, what he went through to become the first African to play Major League Baseball, I don't take anything away from them. But once they achieve those positions, you cannot argue against the fact that the system used them against the more militant and independent elements of our movement. Jackie Robinson and Thurgood Marshall were the chief spokespersons against Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam in the 50s and the early 60s. They were always the ones that the system went to ensure that they would get comments designed to steer the people away from the militant message of Malcolm X. Thurgood Marshall called Malcolm X a thug and a criminal because he had done time in prison. And Jackie Robinson said very similar things about Malcolm. So in my eyes, these people can never be heroes. But my point is that the system allows them, Lil Wayne, Nick Cannon, Kanye West, all of these people are allowed to become celebrities within the capitalist system as long as they can play a role of propagating the values of the capitalist system and continuing to be visual mouthpieces perpetuating the capitalist system to us. That's why they're allowed to be there. And as a result of that, their individual participation in the system and their achievement of money for being paid to be clowns and buffoons is substituted against morality and a commitment to our forward progress as a people. We don't even see that we don't even value that. Morality and a commitment to our integrity. All we value is money because we see these people with money and comfort, and we think that that's all life is about, is achieving money and comfort, even if you have to sell your soul to get it. That we should look up to these people because they've been able to achieve that. It don't take nothing to be a slave. It don't take nothing to be their kind of slave. They're not the same kind of slave as our ancestors on the plantations throughout the Americas. That's not what these Negroes are doing. They're house Negroes set up by the master to perpetuate the master's interests. The character that Samuel L. Jackson played in the Django movie, that's what all these Negroes are that I'm naming to you, that you're looking at on these screens. That's their role in the capitalist system, is to play that role. And the fact that these people are so emboldened to say the things they say and to do the things they do is a reflection of a couple of things. It's a reflection of their ignorance, because if you look at them, none of them are really saying anything unless you're completely ignorant about everything. If you're ignorant about everything, then I can understand why some of the things these people say would impress you. But for people who have any kind of analysis of history, like, this is child's play what these clowns are talking. I watched a video of this guy, I think his name was Kevin Samuels. He was supposed to be some kind of relationship person, some African that talked about relationships. And he's talking about the sisters calling into his show, whatever he had. I don't know. I don't follow that nonsense. I just happened upon it. But the sister called in and she was complaining about, the inability to find a consistent and positive relationship with a man. And so this clown, this coon, is on there, and he's talking about, well, you went and had 2 children without even demanding a man to marry you, and now you're older with 2 kids, and you're expecting some man to want you now, when you gave away your right to have leverage in the situation, when you allowed a man to give you children and leave you, and this nonsense. And a lot of people will hear that and say, well, that's right, because you have marbles floating around in your head between your ears. So you really think that that's an impressive analysis. But for anybody thinking, you would understand there are so many moving parts and variables to that kind of analysis. The little simple, it's like the man told Jesse Jackson years ago, you cannot solve 125th Street problems with Sesame Street rhymes. But a lot of us are on the Sesame Street rhymes level. So that's all we can understand. And that's what these people, these celebrities, that's what they do. People, Charles Barkley, oh, he's so intelligent. Charles Barkley is an absolute fool in the air, things he says. Every time he opens his mouth to talk about our people's struggle, you should cringe. He has no idea. He's not read a single book. I don't even know the coon, and I know he has not read a single book about our people's liberation. He won't even reference a book because he probably doesn't even know how to read. But he will say all these things off the top of his head. Him and Shaquille O'Neal, a big brute idiot, and you all, oh yeah, they sure did. They said something. They ain't said nothing. And we have to begin to understand how to create an analysis based upon the objective conditions of our people and what our people need, our culture, and our experiences within this capitalist system, and not just listen to what somebody says that sounds good because it just sounds like good stimuli that we're reacting to, because that's all that is when these people talk. And because of this, we react to them. They're reacting to the capitalist system. It's paying them to say all this nonsense and do all these nonsense things. And then because of that, we react to that stimuli from them, and we think that we're learning something and we're doing something because it feels good to us because it's stimuli. It's not education. And then because of that, that's the reason why we know so much about OJ and R. Kelly and Cosby and all these people than we know about anybody that's made any real contribution to our people's forward progress. We don't know anything about anybody that's done that. And I'll give you a current example. Now, I'm glad the sister, the WNBA player, Brittany Griner, I'm glad that she was able to get out of the prison in Russia. Nobody should be in prison except the people who run the capitalist system worldwide. That's who should be behind bars. So I don't think she should have been in prison for having no vape cartridge or whatever it was they put her in prison for. And clearly she was a political football. But you've got to learn to look at this stuff deeper than that. Because what we should be looking at with that is that any day now, it's going to happen. Take my word for it. She's going to come out, oh, I thank the American government for putting itself out there to free me. And then this, again, is more propaganda designed to uphold the capitalist system. When the real analysis is that, African, you never should have been put in jail in the first place. And the fact that you were is because of this worldwide system that uses us as political pawns to serve its interests. These people left her in prison. How many months? 9 months they left her in prison because it just didn't. They wanted to use that time, I guess, to gauge the political capital they can get by releasing her, so they could help them in their political agenda. That's the only reason why they did it. If they couldn't find a way to do that, she'd still have her black behind in prison over there. So this is what we have to understand about this system. But sure enough, any day, watch, mark my words, here she comes. I thank the Biden administration for, just like the coons that got released from prison under the Trump administration. I mean, we are just such house slaves thanking these colonizers for doing the least amount they could possibly do and doing nothing to advance our people's collective struggle. But they did a little something for us because we, just weren't thinking or whatever and got caught, whatever the situation was. And they did something for us as individuals. And that's all we care about. So we will perpetuate this propaganda. And that is just a disgraceful existence. and a total lack of dignity and a total lack of integrity that these people display. And that's the reason why we constantly say that we should not be elevating these people. You know, years ago in the 1990s, if you listen to hip hop, old hip hop, the old politicized hip hop of the late 80s and the 90s, you know, the artists like Public Enemy and, you know, Sister Soldier, the Boogie Down Productions, all of these groups that were coming out with these X-Clan, coming out with these conscious lyrics, so-called conscious lyrics. If you, at that time, a lot of them chose to honor the APRP by listing our name on their album. We appreciated that. And they chose to honor us by having edits of Kwame Ture's speeches on their albums. I know Boogie Down Productions, what I would argue is their best album in 1990 was Edutainment. And they had several snippets of Kwame Ture on that album. And so we were talking at that time, they had proposed that they have some sort of partnership, like they put the party's logo on their albums. And as a very young man at that time, that sounded great to me. You know, BDP was hot. And I'm like, yeah, we need to go for that. And we had a meeting with Kwame when he came through, and he was 100% opposed to it. And when we asked him why, he said, well, these people are entertainers. They're not revolutionaries like we are. They're not activists and organizers like we are. They're entertainers. Their primary objective is to make money. They're buffoons, clowns, and performers for the capitalist system. Even if right now they have a message that advances our struggle on some level, they are not committed to that. They're committed to putting that message out right now because it's popular and it'll sell records for them. The minute that they don't see that, they'll move away from that. And at that time, I argued, I thought he was so short-sighted to say that. But in time has proven that his analysis was correct, because Boogie Down Productions, they started KRS-One started doing commercials for Sprite soda. So this is exactly what Kwame warned us about. Because if we would align ourselves with, I'm not saying he wants to do Sprite commercials, do the damn Sprite commercials. But the point is that as a revolutionary independent party, we don't want to be affiliated with no damn Sprite. So that would have been disastrous for us to go forward with that, because that would have aligned us with that backward position. So that was what he was trying to tell us at that time. These people are not committed to this movement. They're celebrities. They'll say whatever they want to say when it benefits them. Beyonce will do a Super Bowl tribute to the Black Panther Party, and then we'll turn around and wear fur and do some other reactionary stuff for the capitalist system. So what's the song she got out now? We're gonna tear up the night. So, you know, we're gonna tear up the night, or whatever the hell she's saying. But you get my point. The point is that these people cannot be relied upon to consistently advance the struggle of the masses of our people, because that's not what they're there for. They're there to make money by performing the art that they have the ability to perform. And that's what they're there to do. So we're saying, instead of being confused about that, we have to make a choice between these simplistic one-liners that these clowns put out there that appeal to our basic stimulus, or a concrete analysis that requires us to engage in some work to understand it and articulate it. And everybody wants to do the easiest thing because that's just easy, but that is not the way that we can advance our struggle on a collective level. That must be understood. Because once you're studying real revolutionary material, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Amilcar Cabral, Mangaliso Sobukwe, Steve Biko, Fidel Castro, Ernesto Che Guevara, Le Dewan, any of the great Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, any of the great works, Rosa Luxemburg, and you're studying all of these folks, then that gives you a whole different analysis of the world than if all you're aware of is Kanye West and this Kevin Samuels person and T.D. Jakes and Barkley and all these house Negroes who are just saying whatever they have to say to bring in the dollars. And that's it. I don't even understand, y'all. T.D. Jakes is a wonderful example. This man is a multi-millionaire, lives in Jesus Christ wore sandals, you all, and waged war on behalf of the poor. This man is not a representative. You got to be out of your damn mind if you want to try to convince me he's a representative of Jesus. No, he's a representative of capitalism. That's what he is. And a lot of us are so dumb, we don't know the difference. That's the problem. So we have got to understand the importance of us realizing how to differentiate that so that we can be in the position to prepare ourselves properly and build ourselves up, especially if you're going to take on the important task of raising children. You know, if you want to be somebody that has licorice between your ears, that's your choice. Okay, I really don't care what you do. You know, just don't be out driving while I'm driving, so I can be safe, or anybody else can be safe. That's the only thing I ask of you. But if you're going to have children, they didn't choose to have licorice between their ears. They probably want to have cerebral mass between their ears that's working. So take that into consideration. You have a responsibility for more than just yourself. Develop an independent analysis instead of mindlessly following the analysis provided to you by our enemies. That means you got to be willing to do some work. You got to be willing to do some work. Nothing in life comes to you unless you put in some work for it. You can't exercise and do no work and make progress. You can't advance in school or work with no effort and make progress. Everything in life worthwhile requires some effort, you all. You have to be uncomfortable. And so many of us will do anything to avoid being uncomfortable. Well, then just call it like it is. You're just a lazy bum who wants everybody to do everything for you intellectually. You want to be just a sponge to absorb everybody else's energy, and you're not here to make any kind of positive contribution. And if you're listening to these celebrities, that's exactly what you're doing. So let's decide today to stop that and say that we're going to decide that we're going to try to think deeper about these things when they happen. We're not going to be stop spreading what these celebrities say. Look up what our true revolutionary theorists and practitioners have to say about it and spread that. Would you please do that? I'm so sick of seeing Kanye West and nobody knows who Mangaliso Sobukwe is. Nobody's read the Green Book by Gaddafi, but I got to listen to what Nick Cannon. I mean, that is so dumb. And it's such a course of action that is going to continue to keep us from being able to make any type of qualitative progress whatsoever. We ain't down for that, and we're going to continue, even if we're the only ones doing it, to advance. That we need to learn to collectively struggle and uphold our dignity and culture and do the work required to ensure that that happens. So we thank you all for joining us. Come back next week. Bring some people. December 18th. Shakur is going to lead a presentation on Pan-Africanism and ableism. Very important topic. So we want to invite you to come back here, bring some folks. If you're going to be participating in these people's holidays, then at least spend your money with revolutionary organizations. So go to our AAPRP Forward Ever shop, buy a African-owned period hoodie or some of our United Africa attire, and give that to your family. Start a discussion instead of just sitting around eating and falling asleep from the itis and making no kind of contribution to society. Go to APRP-intl.org, contribute to our party Congress effort next month. We appreciate that. Go to abetterworld.me. Any donations that are received there are going to be forwarded to our party Congress effort. Hoodcommunist.org. Please continue to go there and support it. Donate to the Thomas Sankara Center for Liberation and Pan-African Unity. We have all of our AAPRP programs there on the bottom. Please support them as well. They're also asking you to raise money for this worthy work that we're engaged in. And please continue to support my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. The little royalties that I've gotten from it the last couple of months, I forwarded on to support our party Congress effort. So we ask you to continue to support my book so we can continue to use whatever we get from it to support our struggle. And then you can get the contents from the book to help you organize. We appreciate each and every one of you. We hope you are well today and the rest of the day. Please stay strong. Don't let these people discourage you and demoralize you. Don't let them win. They're not good enough to win. Refuse to lose. Don't let them win. Don't let them tell you that there's something wrong with you and you got to be depressed. The only thing you should be depressed about is that all of us are not standing up and running over these people's chests. So feel good about yourself. Feel good about what you want to be as a human being. Keep pushing. Stay strong. Forward ever. Have a great rest of your evening.